This video is powered by Ground News. Very dodgy World Cup allocations. Weird new peace prizes. And somehow, in my opinion at least, Messi's Argentina always seems to get a little bit of special treatment.
Chill, relax, we work on everything.
Oh, and yeah, the big one. Corruption. Lots and lots of corruption. That is pretty much FIFA today. But does it really have to be? Because here's the thing. 6 out of the 8 teams in the World Cup quarterfinals were European. 3 out of the 4 teams in the semifinals were European. And the final, that will be half European too. The World Cup is quite simply dominated by European teams. And this year really isn't an unusual one. European countries have won 5 out of the last 8 World Cups too. So, this for me leads to the question, what would actually happen if Europe just simply left FIFA? And maybe even created their very own rival World Cup. The World Nations Cup, for example. Could it actually work? And to answer that, we do really need to understand first how the football ecosystem around the world actually works today. And for that, we're going to look at my local club, Bayern Munich. Because Bayern Munich plays within the German footballing system, which ultimately falls under the Germany's National Football Association, the DFB. And the DFB, in turn, is a member of 2 much larger organizations. You've heard of them. First, UEFA, which governs European football. And of course, the second, FIFA, which governs football globally. And the same is true for all 55 national football associations right here in Europe, who are part of both UEFA and FIFA. But of course, Europe is just one part of the global football system. And across the rest of the world, there are another 156 national football associations that are members of FIFA, bringing the grand total to 211. And just like Europe has UEFA, the other regions of the world have their own continental confederations too. When it comes to Europe though, UEFA governs European football. It organizes competitions that you for sure know, like the European Championship and the Nations League for national teams, as well of course as the famous Champions League, Europa League, and the recently added Conference League for clubs. FIFA, meanwhile, governs the global game, and most importantly for this video, it organizes the World Cup. Now, FIFA is essentially a giant global club made up of these 211 national football associations. And when FIFA makes some of its most biggest and most important decisions, all of these associations get to vote. Who becomes FIFA president? They vote. Changes to FIFA's rules? They vote again. And even who gets to host the World Cup? They vote. And the system truly is remarkably simple. Every national football association, no matter their size, gets exactly 1 vote. Germany, France, and Brazil get 1 vote each. But so do San Marino, Curacao, and Togo. Now, and in many ways, you're probably thinking, hey, that sounds perfectly fair. But it also means that Europe, despite being arguably the center of global football, has surprisingly little power inside of FIFA. UEFA has 55 national associations. FIFA has 211. So even if every single European association voted together, Europe would control only around 26% of the vote. And this really does open the door to patronage and potential corruption because there's such a massive conflict of interest. You see, FIFA gives billions of euros to national football associations, many of which depend heavily on that money. So if you're running for, let's say, FIFA president, keeping them happy matters. Because after all, if your association has received millions under the current president, why would you vote against him? And for me, the best example of how these incentives can work is Gianni Infantino's election as FIFA president in 2016. One of his major campaign promises was to expand the World Cup from 32 to 40 teams, with FIFA later going even further and expanding it to 48 teams. And who benefited most from an expanded World Cup? Well, countries that previously struggled to qualify, particularly across Africa and Asia. Regions that collectively represent a huge voting bloc inside of FIFA. And yeah, guess who won the election? Infantino. Now, was that because he was the best man for the job, or did promising more countries access to football's biggest tournament help him politically? I'll let you decide that one, although I honestly think the answer is pretty obvious. And the crazy, crazy thing is, he's doing it again. With re-election coming up next year, he wants to increase the World Cup to 64 teams. And Ground News, our sponsor for this video, shows that this story was reported widely across the world, with 278 news sources, many of them leaning left, even more of them leaning right, and quite a few in the center too. And this is why I find this tool so interesting, because it basically summarizes what the left side thinks of this story and what the right side thinks of this story. So, for example, left-leaning outlets frames the 64-team idea as radical and even more of a money-making machine, while the right side of the media is a bit more positive about it, talking about a permanent host even, and a huge success. And the great thing is, when you scroll down, you also see all of these articles listed. The right articles, the center ones, and also the left. And another great feature is it shows the factuality of an article, and it shows the political leaning and also the ownership, which is great in the fragmented media landscape we have today. Oh, and there's also podcasts, which I love. Anyway, that is why I truly love this tool, as you can quickly compare news sources and get a great overview of every story. And you can now get 40% off their Vantage plan using my link in the description below, or of course the QR code on the screen right now. Back to the video. As mentioned before, the conflict of interest is so crystal clear. And it really is no surprise that FIFA remains plagued with corruption. So what can Europe actually do about all of this? Well, I think there's basically 3 options. And option 1 is super simple. Let's accept the status quo and do fuck. Of course, we'll keep complaining about FIFA, we'll keep voting against Infantino, but ultimately, we'll just keep losing. And that brings us to option 2. Try to reform FIFA from within. Great idea, right? But as we've seen, that's just a bit difficult, because Europe only has 55 votes out of 211. But Europe, to be very honest, has something much more powerful than votes. It has football. France, Germany, Spain, England, Italy, Portugal, the list goes on. Oh, and of course, they have the very best, the Netherlands, my own team. And a World Cup without any of those countries would really not be much of a World Cup at all. FIFA desperately needs Europe. And that gives UEFA enormous leverage if, and this obviously is a massive if, all 55 European associations are actually willing to speak with one voice. And that is, of course, as always, the very key problem. Because as with literally everything in Europe, as you've seen on this channel, Europe speaks with so many different voices. If the Dutch KNVB were to leave FIFA alone, it would be a disaster for the Netherlands. No World Cup, a huge financial hit, and serious sporting consequences. I mean, I really want to see Holland win the World Cup in my lifetime, so that mission or vision or hope would also be destroyed. And meanwhile, FIFA would just keep on going without them, without a problem. But, of course, if all 55 European associations left, or even seriously threatened to leave, that's a very different story. And this isn't completely unprecedented, because in 2021, when FIFA was pushing the idea of holding a World Cup every 2 years, yeah, even more money grabbing, reports suggested that at least 12 national football associations in Europe were considering the nuclear option, leaving FIFA altogether. And in the end, of course, the proposal went nowhere. So European pressure can really work, guys. And of course, if it doesn't, there's always option 3, leaving FIFA and creating something new. And even that would not be completely unprecedented in sport. Just look at golf. In 2022, Live Golf launched as a direct competitor to the established PGA Tour and attracted some of the world's biggest players and forced the existing establishment to deal with a genuine rival. Honestly, competition is kind of healthy. Now, football is obviously much bigger and more complicated, but the basic principle is the very same. If UEFA and all European football associations left FIFA, the World Cup would be devastated and forced to act. And if UEFA could somehow convince CONMEBOL, the South American Confederation, with which already has a very close relationship, to join them and create a new global tournament, maybe something like the World Cup of Nations, this narrative becomes even stronger. Because then the rest of the world will surely, very quickly, follow. This is what I think. Honestly, I absolutely hated all the stupid boycotts and symbolic gestures around the Qatar World Cup. The German team covering their mouths, politicians making silly statements, and everyone suddenly acting shocked that FIFA had awarded the World Cup to Qatar. To me, it all felt completely pointless. Because guys, Qatar didn't create the system. Qatar simply just played the system that we have tolerated, participated in for decades. So, instead of making these stupid symbolic gestures every 4 years, Europe should finally use the enormous power it actually has to change FIFA itself and go hard for option number 2, reforming FIFA. And I think some of the reforms are super obvious. First, make FIFA's presidential elections transparent. Yeah, the current vote is secret, so we have no idea how individual national associations actually voted. Did Germany vote for Infantina? Did France? Did England? We just don't know. And this needs to change because that opens this up to scrutiny. Second, separate FIFA's development funding from its political leadership. I mean, how obvious is that? FIFA should absolutely continue funding pitches, training centers, and footballing programs around the world, for sure. But that money should be distributed by a genuinely independent body, not by the same leadership that depends on the votes of the very associations receiving that money. I mean, come on, guys. Anyway, Europe, just like in politics, needs to finally realize how much power it actually has and start using it. And if FIFA still, after all of this, refuses to change, well, then there's always option 3. Because FIFA does not own football. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to dig deeper into media bias and truly understand how stories are being framed and why, then really do check out our sponsor, Ground News. You can get the unlimited access Vantage plan with 40% off by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen right now. And as always, a very special shout out to our presidents. Thank you guys for making all of this possible. Your support truly is amazing. See you in the next video.